Good morning. My name is Dan Rundy. I'm a Senior Vice President at CSIS, and I head the Americas Program. Thank you for joining us today for a discussion on the opportunities for the creative economies of Guatemala, Haiti, and the rest of the region, taking consideration lessons learned from Taiwan. Before we begin, I'd like to remind you that you can submit questions to our panelists by clicking on the link on the event webpage. Taiwan has become a global economic success story by taking steps to avoid the middle-income country trap, increasing innovation-led economic growth, and emphasizing its creative economy. Before the pandemic, Taiwan focused on increasing and supporting intellectual property rights, promoting democracy and free speech, providing financial incentives to support the creative economy, and to support small and medium-sized enterprises. During the pandemic, it is like everyone else, Taiwan has switched to virtual events and has been fostering to reach the world and Taiwan through local digital streaming platforms. Colombia is one example here in the region in the Western Hemisphere of the economic importance of cultural and creative industries. 3% of Colombia's economy is comprised of its creative industries, and the goal is for creative industries to make up 6% of the country's GDP by 2022. It's a very ambitious goal. During the pandemic, the creative economy unfortunately has shrunk by as much as more than 30% in Colombia. Haiti, we're very lucky to have the Haitian ambassador to the U.S. with us today, also has enormous potential to expand its creative industries. There's been an emphasis on rebuilding culture after the earthquake, aided by UNESCO. The Foreign Minister of Culture, Lamont Toussaint, said in 2017 that Haiti has an impressive bastion of creators, provide a competitive advantage to leverage Haiti's cultural and creative industries. Guatemala's creative industries grew over $100 million in less than 10 years. Their creative sectors account for 3% of the country's GDP. Young people in Guatemala account for 60% of the creative economy's employment. And there's an enormous youth bulge in places like Haiti and Guatemala. So if we want to answer the challenge of a youth bulge, the creative economy is going to be a part of that, answering the mail on that. So, the other thing is that, we're very, very fortunate, though. I think that creative economy is something we need to understand. If we want to escape the middle-income country trap, if we want to think about diversifying economies away from commodities, if we want to leverage the creativity of human talent that's innate in all of us and in all societies, then we can learn a lot from Taiwan, and there's a lot of potential in the region. That's the point of this conversation today. We're very fortunate to have Congressman Albio Sires from New Jersey. We really appreciate him being with us. He's been a congressman for 13 years. He's currently the chair of the House Foreign Affairs Subcommittee in the Western Hemisphere. He also is a co-chair of the Taiwan Caucus. He's a very strong supporter of Taiwan, encouraging stronger U.S.-Taiwan relations, and we're very, very grateful. He's also very focused on supporting human rights and freedoms across the globe. We also have one other keynote speaker, which is Ambassador Yui. Thank you, Ambassador Yui, also for being with us today. He's the Director General for the Department of Latin American and Caribbean Affairs for Taiwan's Ministry of Foreign Affairs. But without further ado, I'm going to turn the floor over to Congressman Sires first. Congressman, thank you for being with us today. Congressman, I think you're on mute or your screen is frozen. Uh-oh. Yeah, now. To unmute, Congressman. Uh-oh. Technology's much better.
Can you hear me?
Yes. Yes, we can hear you.
Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Well, good. Well, first of all, thank you, Mr. Rundy, for that kind introduction and all you do for the Western Hemisphere. And I know you're in my office often and talking to myself, and we certainly appreciate you for everything that we do, especially when it comes to some of these countries that need so much. So thank you for all your efforts. I want to recognize Ambassador Yui. Nice to see you again. I know it was a year since we last saw each other, but hopefully it won't be that long next time we can sit down and discuss important issues in my office in the near future. So nice to see you. Ambassador Edmund, the same thing. Nice to see you too. and the distinguished panel of speakers, along with everyone in the audience who's joining us virtually today. I want to thank the Center for Strategic and International Studies for convening this event to discuss the important diplomatic and economic partnerships between Taiwan and Latin America. As chairman of the Western Hemisphere Subcommittee, I work every day to deepen the United States engagement with Latin America and the Caribbean. I also serve as co-chair of the Congressional Taiwan Caucus because I am committed to strengthening U.S. relations with Taiwan, and I believe Taiwan is a force for good in the world, including Latin America and the Caribbean. For decades, Taiwan has worked to support democratic institutions, promote human rights, and advance economic opportunity in the hemisphere. As the coronavirus pandemic devastated communities throughout Latin and the Caribbean, Taiwan has donated over 13 million surgical masks to countries in the region. Taiwan also provided material support to the United States and sent masks to hard-hit areas, including my home state of New Jersey, which I greatly appreciated. In recent weeks, many communities in Guatemala, Honduras, and Nicaragua were devastated by Hurricane Eta and Iota, affecting over 7 million people and leaving hundreds of thousands displaced. Taiwan stepped up again, providing over $600,000 in direct humanitarian assistance. Unfortunately, it has become clear in recent years that the Chinese Communist Party would not accept Taiwan's constructive relations. The Chinese government has sought to isolate Taiwan by aggressively targeting the countries which recognize Taiwan diplomatically. In the last few years, El Salvador, the Dominican Republic, Panama have all decided to end their recognition of Taiwan. Government officials throughout the region have told me they feel pressured by China, but that it is difficult to resist China's offers. For instant capital with few strings attached. Yet, in some cases, Chinese investments in America has such interest. Let me give you an example. In Ecuador, China provided over $18 billion in loans for a series of infrastructure projects. One project that Coca-Cola Sinclair was building, Chinese state-owned company, for the shocking price of $2 billion. The dam was built next to an active volcano. Today, this dam has thousands of cracks and is routinely clogged with debris, preventing it from functioning properly. Ecuador's government has had to implement emergency measures to try to minimize the dam's erosion and prevent it from collapsing. By any objective assessment, this project was a failure, a true failure. Yet Ecuador is sending approximately 80%, now, mind you, 80% of its oil exports to China to pay back the debt for this disastrous dam and other wasteful projects. As one former Ecuadorian minister told the New York Times, China took advantage of Ecuador. It is the same formula we have seen the Chinese government use around the world. It is a strategy that exploits murky public procurement processes and takes advantage of short-term thinking on the part of local governments. I mention this example not to cast blame upon every government that has accepted Chinese financing. This is a simple question of political and economic incentive. I also recognize, in many cases, the United States government has been quick to criticize the Chinese, but slow to offer any viable alternative. I believe that if we want to advance the values of economic competition, accountable governance, we need to be at the table. The U.S. needs to do much more to open up opportunities for private sector-led development and investment in the region. We need to re-engage in multilateral institutions, and we need to commit to doing the hard work of combating corruption, even when set short-term political interests, in order to make more inclusive and institutional strengthening. Earlier this year, I introduced a House companion to a bill from Senator Menendez and Rubio that calls for a long-term strategy to expand our diplomatic and economic cooperation with Latin America and more effectively counter China's growing role in the region. I look forward to working with the incoming Biden administration and the new Congress to deepening our ties with allies in Latin America and the Caribbean. U.S. support will be critical as the region seeks to recover from a devastating pandemic and begin distributing a COVID-19 vaccine. As we all know, Taiwan provided a model for the world in its coronavirus response, with just 7 deaths out of a population of nearly 24 million. Not only has Taiwan saved lives, it has provided an example of what a transparent government response can look like. Taiwan has followed the science and deployed effective testing and contact tracing strategies. Looking ahead, it will be important to learn from Taiwan's success as we seek to spur economic recovery and promote innovations in science and public health. Forward to working closely with Taiwan during this next phase of the pandemic response. Thank you again for strategic for inviting me to speak, and thanks to everyone joining us today. Thank you.
Thank you, Congressman. We so appreciate it. Ambassador Yui, over to you.
Thank you, Dan. Again, thank you, Dan, and CSIS for hosting another conversation on Taiwan and Latin America and how we can collaborate together. And also, I want to especially say hi to my respects to Congressman Albio Ceres. As we mentioned at the beginning of this event, that we met about a year ago at your office and talked about very important things about the Western Hemisphere. And I look forward to myself and my government to working with you on Western Hemisphere in the next Congress to come. At the same time, I understand that the designated chairman for the Foreign Affairs Committee at the House, Congressman Gregory Meeks, is also a staunch supporter of Latin America, particularly Caribbean region and Haiti in particular. We have the ambassador here. We also look forward to working alongside with Congressman Ceres, also with Congressman Meeks, to work not only with Latin America, but also to the rest of the world. To my good friend, Ambassador Boshiremon, hello and congratulations on your new assignment in Washington. We've had many strange time conversations, which maybe one day when we publish our autobiographies, we'll share our very interesting conversations. but also Dr. Tai, a fellow Taiwanese countryman who is joining us. She's the real expert for today's event. And all the distinguished panelists who are with us today. Thank you for joining us to talk about Taiwan and Latin America. Most people, what they know about Taiwan is that we make a lot of things. We make toys, we make electronic apparatus. Nowadays, maybe people know that we're the country which makes most of the chips in the world. There was an article today in New York Times, an op-ed saying that pound for pound, Taiwan is probably the most important place in the world because of the chips that we're making. But perhaps Mr. Carlos Arguello knows a little bit about Taiwan, that we're also a cultural powerhouse. Back in the 60s, 70s, most people in Asia, when they saw movies, when they went to see movies, they went to see Taiwanese movies, martial arts and, well, others, the romance. And we were very famous on novels, romance novels, TV soap operas, books, literature, etc. So Taiwan's, and also, performing arts. Visual arts, Taiwan, it's the data I just read, just preparing for this event. Taiwan, I think, ranks number 6 in terms of visual arts market in the world. We're behind Germany, but way ahead of Singapore in terms of visual arts market. So Taiwan culturally is a powerhouse, and every year when we hold the Golden Horse Awards, which is the Asian equivalent of the Oscars for the movies, it's a well-respected event in Asia. But the difference that we have here against, say, the PRC is that we are like-minded countries with you. We share the same values, we share the same principles, and being a free and democratic society, we inspire creativeness. We inspire freedom of speech, and that makes the reason for a variety of opinions and ideas. Taiwan has, I think, again, according to the data I just looked at earlier today, probably about 10,000 publishing houses, which means we are very flourishing. We transited from authoritarian regime when the nationalist government came to Taiwan in 1949 and evolved into a full-fledged democracy. And now people in Taiwan, they speak their minds, without any hesitation, and having 10,000 publishing houses marks the spot. But to be honest, when Dan invited me to this event, and I said, well, creative economy, what is it? And so I had to look it up. And thank you, Dan, for because I doing my Google, I saw this. You guys published an article in September, I think, on what the meaning of creative economy is. So it was the last minute, But so I'm not the expert in this field, but I have my own definition of what creative economy is. I think creative economy basically is making economic activity out of creative ways of doing things. But it has to do with intellectual property, it has to do with performing arts, film industry, TV, gaming, etc. It has to do a lot with culture and tourism. But a lot of what we do in Latin America, in my definition, has also a lot to do with creative economy. Basically, things that were not done before in Latin America, in certain countries, and we've shared our experiences with these countries, with our brothers in Latin America, to improve their economies, to improve the social well-being of these people. And I consider that as a creative economy, which I'll very happily share with you later as we discuss. But Taiwan, as Dan mentioned and Congressman Sirius mentioned, we are at odds with the PRC, and the difference between us and them is that, for example, their loyalty or their value towards what they serve for and to is the CCP, the Chinese Communist Party. even if they join international organizations such as the World Health Organization, the United Nations, which you're supposed to work for the common good of humanity, universality, which most even though you're Colombian, you're from Argentina, but you work for this bigger entity. But for the for the Chinese from mainland China, when they join the United Nations, they're still working for the CCP. And in many cases, there was also an article probably yesterday about this leak in Telegram about a list of the Chinese communist members in London or in Great Britain that pledged allegiance to the Chinese Communist Party, but they were working in different consulates, in defense industries in London, in England, or government offices. So that is the difference between Chinese from Taiwan and someone from the PRC, and this makes the whole difference when you work with Taiwan and Latin America, or when Latin America works with the PRC, in which also Congressman Sirius has pointed out some of the caveats of working with them. I think I'll leave it at that right now, because we have a lot of experts to talk about creative economy, but also I'll pitch in later on during the conversation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ambassador Yui. Thank you so much. I'm so appreciative of you and Congressman Sirius for being with us today. We so appreciate it. We're now going to turn to our panel. We've got some excellent panelists, some really thoughtful people. And the conversation we're going to be having today is about the concept of the possibility of a partnership for Taiwan and Latin America and the creative economy. Before we get that, maybe let's have a conversation. I want to start with Alejandra Luzardo about the concept of a creative economy. Alejandra, you've been working on these issues at the Inter-American Development Bank, and you're the lead specialist in innovation and the creative economy at the IDB. When I say to you the creative economy, what is the creative economy, and what does that mean in the context of Latin America? You're on mute, Alejandra.
Yes. Thank you, Dan, and thank you for all the panelists for this invitation. And basically, at the IDB, when we start working with the creative economy, we define that as the products and services that are coming from the creativity, but it's related to the copyright issue, to the intellectual property. So, for example, when we produce a video game, you can basically copyright some part of that. The same thing with a film. So all these products and services are part of the creative economy. This is what we call it. And we have many sectors. We have more than 38 sectors, from publication, the editorial sector, video games, film industry, and many others.
Is advertising part of it?
Advertising.
ICT? ICT?
ICT, when you are talking about developing software that are related to content. Mm-hmm.
How about music?
Music is also another sector, yes.
Publishing houses?
Publishing houses, yes.
How about artists?
Obviously, everything related to art is part of the creative economy, yes.
Dance?
Dance, yes.
Theater?
Yes.
Museums?
We have more than 38. Yes, museums too.
Well, let's just humor me a little bit here in terms of there's a lot of it's quite broad, and when people think of the creative economy, they shouldn't just think about art and museums and writers. It's broader than that.
It's broader than that, and what we have here is an amazing opportunity, because if we think about what happened during the pandemic, when everybody's locked down at home, when you have actually consuming content through many different platforms, all this content and all these subsectors that are creating this content, like we say before, the musician, the animators that do the animation for stories and all of that, this is translate to an amazing opportunity for an economy to actually produce the content we consume. Because what happened in Latin America, for example, is we are a very big consumers of content, but we are not the biggest producers. So we have to make this switch about how we can really produce what we consume.
And what percent of the GNP of Latin America and the Caribbean is the creative economy?
It's approximately 2%, especially now that we, with the pandemic, we have so many effects. Is down, and we are talking about more than 80 and 90% of employment coming from the creative economy that are lost and affecting many sectors, especially sectors that do not use technology. Like we are talking about performing arts, editorial, festival, carnivals, all that sectors are impacted. But on the other hand, we have sectors like, for example, that use technology, like AgTech, like video games, like the audiovisual sector, that have less impact in the COVID. We have also sectors like video games or AgTech that actually grow during the pandemic. And this is one of the things that we are looking, because obviously from the bank, we are focused on job creation, but there is no doubt that we have to start thinking out of the box and taking seriously sectors like video games that never have been taken that serious in the past. Today, that represents an opportunity.
Are you seeing, Alexander, traditional sectors moving to digital platforms, and what kind of success are they having with that?
Definitely. Right now, what we see is, in order to survive, in the next 2 or 3 years, where we are not sure about how it's going to be the impact of the vaccine. We don't know how many times we have to be closed again and come back, etc. So let's give you an example, like carnivals. How they are going to actually monetize is that they are like a physical experience. So they have to start thinking in different ways of creating a small product or something that keep the consumers capture, inspire, and also try to be able to monetize from that. Because right now, nobody's traveling. So how we are going to be able in that process to keep the inspiration to people that want to go to different part of the Caribbean, for example, to travel and to actually consume before you get there. So this is a challenge that we have, and this is something that all this industry has to start rethinking, how they can diversify the model, the business model they have today.
Great. I know we're going to hear more about this. Thank you so much, Alejandra. Dr. Tai, thank you for being with us. I think it's very appropriate that I turn to you, given that you're the Director General of International Digital Commerce Research Division. Thank you, Dr. Tai, for being here. So how are you seeing, because of the pandemic, the pandemic's been a disruptor and an accelerator and perhaps created opportunities. Right. How has the pandemic disrupted the creative economy, and how can we see digital platforms as a way to help respond to some of this?
Thank you, Mr. Rande. Actually, yes, after COVID-19, it is well recognized that e-commerce and also the digital platform that you mentioned has become a very essential infrastructure to keep the society function after under lockdown. So we see that during the country's pandemic experience, that a lot of people stopped traveling. So they have to find a way, the industry has to find a way to, like Alexandra said, you have to replicate that experience, that physical experience through the digital platform to keep the consumers spend money over this digital platform, so that this digital platform, it becomes the intermediaries that can channel this artist performance or artist work to convey that experience to the consumers, to keep the artists to still have income under the lockdown. So we see that. So you know that in Taiwan, the COVID-19 has been controlled very well. So we haven't feel that urgent need to accelerate the development of a digital platform. But we see the experience in America and some of the Latin American countries that we need a digital platform or need a digital service in order to make the artists' daily life or their production be normal. That's what we see. And we also urge that the governments around the world should start to see e-commerce and also digital platform not only as an industry, but we need to start to see it as an infrastructure, an infrastructure that helps the human society to fight the COVID-19 or fight the the virus, because we see that there may be COVID-20 or COVID-25. We have a lot of waves coming. So the virus will not vanish. The virus will only evolve. So the e-commerce or digital platform will become our tools or our weapons to help our society resilience to this virus attack. And that's what we see.
Great. Thank you so much, Dr. Tai. I mean, one of the things I've taken away from my work with Taiwan in Asia is that there's been several things. One is you need strong intellectual property rights. Second, you need education and training systems that support various professions in the arts, and whether it's film schools or dance schools or music schools, but also even enabling young people to code and to participate in the ICT, having a strong advertising sector. Many of the things are present in the Americas, but I also think we're going to have to add this issue of having strengthened digital infrastructure, because unfortunately, Dr. Tai, I think we're going to have, like you said, a COVID-25 because of a variety of things. Zoonotic transfer of diseases from animals to people. Unfortunately, we're going to continue to have that. I plan to get on an airplane, and I hope other people do too. People are going to continue to travel over air, and so that's going to create. There's a downside to that, and urbanization all mean that we're going to have to think. We're going to be prepared and be more resilient as societies because unfortunately we may have another one of these again. It may be worse or not, but we need meaning in our lives. And I think that the creative economy not only enriches us and gives us a sense of meaning and gives us a connection oftentimes to the divine. I think that there's something special about the creative economy.
To keep ourselves sane when we lock home. So we still can get...
And Dr. Tai, does it matter that Taiwan's a democracy and the Western Hemisphere largely is democratic, except for a couple of glaring exceptions in the Western Hemisphere? Doesn't it matter for the creative economy to participate in having free speech and freedom of association and freedom of thought? Those are important things? Freedom of religion, those are all probably important things to having a creative economy. Is that true, Dr. Tai?
Yes. To be able to speak up your mind, to be able to exercise the creativities that you have, to have that freedom is actually the soil, the foundation of a creative economy. I think so.
I think so. When I was noticed when I was in Taiwan is you had many artists and and we didn't talk about the fashion sector, Alejandro, one of the other sectors we didn't talk about earlier. There's a fashion sector in Taiwan.
Yes.
There are prominent filmmakers in Taiwan. Some people come from other parts of Southeast Asia to move to Taiwan to do work films because they don't feel free to do that in their countries. Is that correct, Dr. Tai?
Yes. From Burman, Myanmar.
Myanmar.
So because in Myanmar, yes.
Okay. Well, look, thank you so much. I just think there's so much that Taiwan can be doing to partner. There are 9 countries that recognize Taiwan diplomatically. You're a generous cooperator with many of them. I'm going to turn to the ambassador to Haiti in a minute. And there's so much potential in the region. It seems to me that a partnership between Taiwan and the Americas, given this context, is a logical one and a big opportunity. So as Taiwan thinks about its development cooperation and thinks about its trade relationships, its commercial relationships, and foreign policy, that I hope to see even more. I know Taiwan's been leading on this and doing yet more on this, but I think there's a demand pull from the region, as Alejandro was talking about, and you all are a potential solutions provider on a number of different ways to this demand that you're seeing in the region. So I hope, Dr. Tai, I hope to see more of you in person, whether in Taipei or Washington or in the Western Hemisphere at some point. We have to stop meeting like this over blue jeans. I hope we can meet in person.
Sure.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Tai. Ambassador Edmonds, thank you for being here. You represent the country of Haiti here in the United States. When I think about Haiti, one of the things I think about is the great artists that you have in Haiti. You have great musicians in Haiti. And you have a lot of important culture as an enormous asset of the country of Haiti. So thank you for being here, Ambassador Edmond.
Thank you so very much, Dan. First of all, let me take this opportunity to thank CSIS for inviting me to take part of this panel. And it's a pleasure to see all my friends, those who are in already, and those I will have to meet soon. And yes, indeed, Haiti, the Haitian people are very imaginative as far as the steps that we are taking to harness the creative abilities of our people into economic opportunities and generate wealth and economic growth. So, in fact, we do have a lot of artists, a lot of potentialities. That's where I believe that the creative economy has no single definitions. If I want to refer to the UNCTAD definitions, where it says this is an evolving concept which builds on the interplay between human creativity and ideas and intellectual property and technology. Essentially, it is the knowledge-based economic activities upon which the creative industries are based. So it's very important that this item today to discuss about Taiwan and Latin America, because Taiwan has made significant strides in growing its economy and becoming an economic success story. Therefore, as well as a democratic country. So it is also a country that has been working to escape the middle-income country trap by increasing innovation-led growth and technology, including creative economy. So we understand and we believe the Taiwan model could be an example to follow and to try on. But at the same time, it's very important for Taiwan and our discussions and our bilateral relations to see how there can be more or greater effort to strengthen that particular economy from those small countries, so we can strengthen them and make them more productive, and contribute particularly in the standardization, and so they could be more competitive and so on. So therefore, as you well pointed out from your introductions, Haiti has a lot of potentials in this area in terms of our craft, artists and performers, and so on. So we do have those potentialities, but we just need the time and the moment to unleash them or to continue to unleash them. So this kind of potentialities can be converted in economic growth.
Ambassador, thank you so much. I couldn't agree more. Thank you so much. I'm so pleased to have my friend Dr. Carlos Diaz, who's the Chief Operating Officer of the National Endowment for Humanities, a friend of CSIS, a friend to many of you here, a friend to Taiwan. Thank you, Dr. Diaz, for being here. You are dealing with you see culture and at the National Endowment for Humanities as a driver of jobs and growth in the United States. And so you were early to this conversation. But also, I know you're also thinking about partnerships and developing partnerships around the world, including in the Western Hemisphere and potentially with Taiwan. So, Dr. Diaz, thanks for being here today.
Thank you, Dan, and thank you to CSIS for this great invitation, and hi to all the panelists. Dan, as you know very well from having me come to some of these sessions, beyond the intrinsic value of minds and souls enriched by it, I often speak about the importance of the cultural sector in two different but complementary ways. First, in terms of dollars and cents. The creative economy is one of the leading sectors of the global economy. As you've heard me say, in the U.S., for example, for the past 2 years, the Bureau of Economic Analysis has reported that the arts, entertainment, and recreation industries had a nominal gross output on average in the range of more than $370 billion, that's billion with a B, dollars up until the first quarter of this year. And that is using a very conservative definition of what constitutes those industries. So investing in the creative economy, simply put, makes a lot of good economic sense, and we need to do a better job promoting how much economic sense it makes. The second way in which I often speak about the creative economy stems from my background and interest in national security policy. I firmly believe that targeted strategic investments in the creative economy can lead a nation to the promotion of the type of soft power that can be harnessed to great effect through a wise foreign policy. That is why during my time working both in the White House and now at the NEH, I have tried to put this at the forefront of my efforts through a number of initiatives that emphasize the importance of soft power and that take advantage of opportunities to collaborate with other nations on projects that bring ideas, that bring insights, and that bring new perspectives to our policy efforts. So let me share with you some of the highlights or some of the projects that we have been working on at the NEH over the past couple of years to promote these partnerships. We have hosted the President of the Republic of Colombia, Iván Duque Márquez, for a discussion on culture and the creative economy. We have partnered with the Department of State to do a number of things, such as leading the U.S. delegation to the OAS 8th Annual Meeting of Ministers of Culture to reaffirm American leadership on cultural diplomacy and to deepen cultural cooperation with our Western Hemisphere partners, promoting cultural cooperation at the 3rd U.S. Qatar Strategic Dialogue, engaging with Doha on their Year of Culture, promoting cultural cooperation at the inaugural U.S.-UAE Strategic Dialogue, and executing an ambitious interagency agreement to showcase the best of American culture, history, and heritage to a worldwide audience at the U.S. Pavilion in the upcoming Expo Dubai, partnering with the Embassy of France in the United States on an international culture festival that will take place around the world, and on other projects that we haven't yet announced, so I'm not going to get ahead of myself on those. But these are just a few of the many examples in which our small agency is helping to shape the narrative that the United States cares deeply about culture and promoting the creative economy. And I can unequivocally state that I would be honored to add Taiwan to the list of successful partnerships that we have cultivated over the years with our closest allies. Because culture, as we all know, is a powerful instrument of global American leadership. And in my opinion, it needs to have a more central role in our foreign policy strategic objectives. As we all know so well, and as the Congressman pointed out a few minutes ago, we're not the only nation that has figured out the power of culture in helping to promote foreign policy objectives. The money coming out of Beijing and going all across the globe is meant to supplant and to take the place of the goods and services that our democracies organically produce by virtue of the fact that we're part of a free and open society. Beijing understands all too well the importance of soft power, and it's clear that they will do whatever it takes to shift the balance away from the U.S. through their international investments in things like Confucius centers all around the world, in telecommunications, in infrastructure, in heavy industry, and in so many other ways. So the United States and its partners need to take a much more aggressive and concerted effort to strengthen the cultural partnerships that nourish our creative communities and that use the power of ideas and of shared values to counter the suitcases of cash that are leaving Beijing and going all over the world. I believe that the dissemination of our creative goods and services can speak directly to individuals around the globe and earn goodwill and understanding for our nation. The creative economy indeed is not a dismissible luxury. It is essential to our national security. And I know that everyone in this virtual room shares a passion for our creative economies. So let's ensure that we continue to promote their growth, their importance, and their effectiveness. And there's no way to do this than through tangible projects and mutual cooperation between nations. And that is why it's so critical, I believe, to have discussions like this one, sponsored by CSIS, to explore different ways in which we can generate those projects and collaborate together as free nations. Thank you.
Carlos, thank you so much. Ambassador Yui, Dr. Tai, Dr. Diaz is one of the most effective, most strategic public servants the U.S. has right now in government. I encourage Taiwan to call my friend Dr. Diaz today, our friends at TechRow, and have a conversation with him, because it's quite clear the United States has an open door with Taiwan on this issue of culture. I encourage you to call him as soon as this is over, please. I encourage that, because I completely agree. And I've known Dr. Diaz a long time, and he's really one of our most strategic and most effective public servants. And so, Dr. Diaz, thank you for being with us today.
Thank you.
Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Carlos, yeah. Okay, let's make that happen. That's it.
Let's do it.
Okay, thank God for blue jeans.
Yeah.
So Carlos Arguello, you're from Guatemala. We wanted a creator, a doer. We talk about theory and grand strategy. These are all important things. I do this for a living, but we needed to talk about something that was real and tangible and creative, because you're in the creative economy. You make a living in the creative economy, Carlos. You're Guatemalan, and you have a video to show us, to give us a sense of sort of what's there. So please, I'm going to start. I'd ask my friends John and company on the tech team to start the video, and then we'll have give Carlos Arguello a chance to comment on his video afterwards. Okay, Carlos Arguello, is that all right? So I'll go mute.
My name is Carlos Arguello, and this is some of the educational visual aid I had in Central America when I grew up. I had dyslexia, and letters and words were very difficult for me. At 17, I left Guatemala, where I went to San Francisco to art school, where I had encounter with computers, and I started working with a mixture of art and technology. Music videos for Michael Jackson, and movies like Space Jam, Batman and Robin, The Mummy, Armageddon. Then I went back to Guatemala, and I realized that there was a lot of youth with talent but no connections to the industry. We started Studio C. At that time there was no schools in Guatemala, so everybody learned in the studio. I came back to LA and we started working in Chronicles of Riddick, The Ring, Fast and Furious, and other big productions. Then Chronicles of Narnia came in. We worked on 370 shots for Chronicles of Narnia, and it was nominated for the Oscars. Since then, we separated the studio in two: a non-profit that helps with education and a studio to help bring the jobs. There are several projects we would love to work with Taiwan. In Guatemala, we want to train from 100 to 500 youth to work on educational projects to revolutionize the way Central America and the rest of Latin America learned. In Colombia, we're concentrating in visual effects. Netflix have grown from doing 5 series to planning on doing 50 series a year. This is Always a Witch, filmed in Cartagena. And Green Frontier in the Amazons. Due to Colombian film and digital content incentives, Hollywood will produce more in Colombia. We are trying to do a visual effects studio of 100 people with Ruta N, and we're also trying to do an animation studio with 3 known producers from Hollywood: Andrew Adamson from Narnia, Aaron Warner from Shrek, and Dan Shuba from Angry Birds. We have 3 movies and series in different stages of production. And finally, in Colombia, CA Digital Academy, a distant learning digital academy to be able to standardize the way Latin American youth learn animation and visual effects.
Okay. Carlos, that was fantastic. Thank you so much. There's an enormous youth bulge in Guatemala, and we need to find jobs and opportunities for young people in Guatemala. And obviously this is, I think one of the areas is the creative economy. And one of the things I've learned is working with my friends in Taiwan, it's about creating pathways for them to participate in various parts of the creative economy. So please, I'd welcome some additional thoughts that you have, Carlos Arguello, about this.
Yes, I came into the creative economy sort of by chance. I left Guatemala when I was 17 to study art in the US. That's where I encountered computers. And I immediately touched computers, and my first job was with NASA and Ford Aerospace. Then moving into, the movies that I showed, like Space Jam, The Ring, Fast and Furious, Chronicles of Narnia, and so forth. The idea is that basically talent is everywhere, but opportunities are not. And essentially, when I went back to Guatemala in the year 2000, I found out there was a lot of youth Basically, Latin America is a very creative country. Continent by itself. There's a lot of writing, paintings, dancing, colors in general. And if you mix that creativity from Latin America with technology, then you can create products that you can sell not just in your country, but the region and the world. So the idea is basically, how do we bring jobs, especially to the young people in Latin America, and we connect them to a global economy. And we believe that creative industries is the way to go. We concentrate mostly in what we call digital content for animation, series, movies, education. And there's a lot of different levels that you can participate in the creative economies. So I've been lucky enough now with our foundation. I've been traveling all over Latin America. I worked with Sony International Animation for the last 3 years, seeing animation and what's happening in Latin America, and then with Netflix in the area of visual effects. So the talent is there in Latin America. We do have issues still about connectivity in countries like Guatemala, but I also work very closely with Colombia. And Colombia, for example, in Antioquia, Medellin, we trained 2,000 youth in 6 months. So the talent is there. We can connect them to the global industry, and we would love to work with Taiwan also in several projects. I know that there's a lot of animation for education, for youth that we can participate and work with. I know you have film, visual effects, technology also that we would love to share with you guys. And one of our other issues is that we don't have a standardized education. So we're trying to create a long-distance digital academy to be able to teach the same in Guatemala, in Haiti, in Mexico, in Argentina, Colombia, everywhere. So then the youth can work from different countries and different places, but work as a unit with the same sort of knowledge and sort of helping the numbers that the global industry needs, because this industry moves with a lot of numbers. So Latin America has a lot of studios of people that have 10, 15 studios, but really over here in Los Angeles, where I am, the studios are 1,500 people, 2,000 and 5,000 people in one studio. So ideally, we're going to increase our numbers by mixing our countries and working together. But we're open and we're glad to work with Taiwan in any of these projects.
I love this. I love this. This is fantastic. Carlos, thanks for being with us today. I've got some really thoughtful questions from the audience. Let me start with my friend Christina Borelli. I understand that as part of the creative economy, Taiwan is also hoping to be a leader in sustainable alternative activities, agroforestry, et cetera, that be developed in the Amazon. Is this true? Can you talk about this? Ambassador Yui, let me go to you about this, about sustainable alternative activities, agroforestry, et cetera. Do you have a comment on this, Ambassador Yui?
It's okay. Well, not in particular. We're not. We haven't incurred into the Amazon yet. We haven't been invited. But if there was a chance, we'll be more than happy to. Again, we have developed many technologies and sustainable. Taiwan. The Taiwan development model. We spent a lot of time developing our industries. The first since 1949 and on until the 70s. Without putting much attention to pollution, environment, etc. But in early 80s, it was not until the early 80s that we set up an EPA. Imagine that. But since then, we've placed a lot of importance on environmental protection, sustainable economy, or they call circular economy. So, things that we recycle being given a new life. So we've been placing a lot of importance on that lately, but we're more than happy to share. But I would like to also make some input on Dr. Tai's when she mentioned the digital, or Dan, you mentioned about the digital platform and how to use it in the creative economy, or Dr. Tai saying, well, how to make people open their purses during the lockdowns. Well, digital platform. But I'll just make one example of this, the combination of all of this. We have a very famous band, pop band called Mayday. It's 4 or 5 guys, very popular band in Taiwan. But during our early stages of pandemia, we also had lockdowns. We could not have mass concentration such as a concert. So what they did, this band, what they did was they did make a concert in a stadium, empty stadium, but they did a live concert. And then people logged on to a certain, code via internet, and they paid to see the live concert via the internet. So they were in a live event, but not physically in the concert stadium, but they were looking at. So that was a very creative way of making money, even though people were not in the stadium. But when I mentioned at the beginning, my definition of creative economy is also like Ambassador Edmund mentioned, just not just the 38, that Alejandra mentioned, but for example, in Haiti, lately we've been, the President Moise and my ambassador has been going to the countryside for what I consider a creative way of making an economy is. Haiti has a chronic shortage of electricity, especially in the countryside. So what we've done in Haiti is we set up, and they also need water for irrigation. So what we've done is we set up pumping stations using solar energy. So they do not need electricity. They do not need to be wired to a power source because they have their own power source via the sun. And we've established so far 17 solar power pumping stations across the country, and we'll be setting up more. And it's been a fabulous result because obviously without, instead of using it by hand, now we have electrical pump via solar power. Also in Guatemala, for example, that's a very successful program that we did in Guatemala. It's called OTOP, One Town, One Product, because tourists who went to Antigua, Guatemala, they went to Petén, they went to Atitlan, they always bought the same arts crafts. So wherever you go, you always bought the same things. You say, well, there's really no difference. So what we did is we brought our own experience in Taiwan and made taught in each town to develop their own particular arts craft. For example, if this town is good in pottery, concentrate in pottery. If you're good on, woven texture, you concentrate on that. We also taught them how to improve their products, improve their packaging, and improve their sellability or whatever. But and has been a very fairly successful project in not only Guatemala but also Nicaragua and Honduras. Another example, which probably go a little farther, but in Paraguay, people in Paraguay they love to eat meat. They're a meat-eating country. They eat meat breakfast, lunch, and dinner. But we brought about 10, 15 years ago, we brought in an alternative to meat, which was tilapia. The fish, tilapia, raised fish. And nowadays, after our efforts, you can find tilapia all over the country as an alternative to beef. But at the same time, using technology, creative technology, we also help Paraguay. They have their own indigenous kind of fish called pacu, which is sort of like it's a very tender beef, and also their meat, and also called the surubi, which is a sort of local catfish, which they like a lot, but they can only catch it live in the river. So through our technology, we're able to make it so that it can be farm raised in captivity, and they basically changed completely their availability of this fish in Paraguay. In my opinion, obviously, my broader sense of creative economy, it comes from that, and we've been willingly sharing these experiences with our friend countries.
Ambassador, that's great. I've got one last question I need to ask our colleagues. Let me turn to Ariana and just give her a chance to. How can a digital platform truly help fine arts and impact on the level of intimacy, authenticity of a gathered audience? Alejandra.
Well, sorry to talk to you a little bit. I wanted to go back one thing regarding the sectors, which is, I think, is important. It's important that we actually, by country, define the sectors well so we can measure the impact. And this is something that will allow us to, when we go to the governments and when we go to looking for finance, this will help us to finance the sectors under the creative industry. So I just wanted to make sure that this is why from the IDB we define this sector very specific so we can help the countries in the region. Regarding your questions about how we can grow and how we can grow these platforms, I think there are many things that we can do regarding skills. I think there is an opportunity to learning from people like Taiwan, United States, Canada, and many other countries that have been going through that. I will say reskilling the students in different ways and using technology for a long time and bringing this knowledge to our region. The other thing is the volume need, as Carlos mentioned. In order to produce a movie, like say Shrek, you need 300 animators only for that specific movie. Sometimes in small countries like in the Caribbean or Paraguay, we don't have the volume. And this is why it's so important to standardize these skills, to understand what is needed to the production of this content in the digital world. So we together as a region can present these solutions and opportunities. And also, one of the things that is important to mention is how we partner with this with the private sector, not only with the government, with the private sector. The private sector is key to help people from small companies to big companies to make sure they can understand how marketing is, how they can take this product to the next level, to the global market. And this is only be able to happen if we actually bring this company and give them opportunity to invest in our countries and to work with them to make sure that we can export these services and products.
Excellent. I think we have to stop there, sadly. I think we need to, I promised to cut it off at 9 o'clock. I'm sorry, Ambassador Yui, and I'm sorry to the rest of the panelists, but thank you all very much. I think this was a really rich discussion. We're grateful that you all were with us today, and I need to end it here, but thank you all very, very much. This was excellent. Thank you so much.
Happy holidays.